So this film, it's really a story about impermanence, and the way that story is told is through Sifu Yang, who's an immortal, and he sees impermanence all around him. He comes to his immortality through the practice of his martial arts, and this mark appears on his arm. He loses his wife. Her body vanishes, and it vanishes under the darkness of the shadow of a dragon. And as that shadow allows light back in, on the ground are two Yin Yang spheres in a box. And at first, Sifu Yang doesn't know what these Yin Yang spheres are. He doesn't know what they do. He keeps them, and he wrestles with his immortality. He tries to end his life unsuccessfully. But he begins to meditate with the spheres. He begins to twirl them. He begins to listen to their sound. And what happens at first is he has a vision of what we could call the dragon's realm. And in the dragon's realm, his wife is there. She calls to him. She wants him to join her there, but he doesn't know how. And she urges him to keep looking and keep searching for a way. And so he finds that these spheres could be his way. They could be the way to escape his immortal coil and to reach the much more permanent, much more lasting state that his wife is in and rejoin her. And so as he experiments with these spheres, he practices Qigong with them, and it's almost as though they kind of lead him. But it does feel like there's this other force almost guiding him. At a certain point, two young boys come across him. He takes them on as students and he essentially raises them. And as he's doing this, what he begins to realize as they age and they learn more martial arts is that the energy of the sphere, the power of the spheres increase the more people that there are, now that there's the brothers. This becomes very apparent to him, and he continues to practice in this way, letting the spheres and the brothers lead him as though they're all elements of a whole that's coming together. And the spheres lead him to two more elements. They lead him and now the brothers to the two Yin sisters. And the Yin sisters join them and they practice together. And at a certain point, he starts to notice a mark appearing on one of his disciples' arms, a mark the same as his own. He looks at each of his students' arms and realizes that each of them has this mark, and that in fact each of them are immortal. So now his quest for death, essentially, now encompasses their journeys, and he feels the responsibility, since he's given them these arts that have led them, although somewhat unknowingly, to this fate as immortals. He must liberate them. All of this practice with the spheres culminates in a single night of a fight between all of them. And this is the heart of the film. Everything that I've said previously is all told through flashbacks. In this fight, he finds that while working with the spheres, death does occur to each one of his disciples. So first, the two brothers die, and then one of the sisters, and he's left with Hua Yin. And Hua Yin, she has a bit of a crush on Sifu. And this is alluded to earlier, but Hua Yin becomes a greater part of the story. We hear her voice. She talks about a dragon dwelling inside her body, and that this dragon emerges in times when the veil of permanence drops away. And so her sister has just died, and there's a moment in which she's meditating. And as she arises from that meditation, the wind and her work in harmony in this weeping willow sword form. The very form that she's displaying, earlier in Sifu's vision, he sees his wife performing this form in the dragon's realm. So this form that Hua Yin performs is exactly the same as his wife's form. And he begins to see parallels of similarities between the two. It becomes apparent that Hua Yin's skill has leveled up a great deal, and she is a match for Sifu Yang. And as they fight, he falls in love with her. He in fact saves her life after almost killing her. Hua Yin doesn't know how to take this, so she runs away, and Sifu Yang on his own decides to search for her. As he searches for her, he uses the Yin Yang sphere. At this point, she has acquired the other Yin Yang sphere. He's allowing himself to be pulled in her direction. But instead, he comes across a still pool of water. In it reflected the moon. He sees a dragon. The reflection of that dragon turns into a whirling wind that throws the entire forest to and fro. And he fights it, allows himself to merge with this wind while trying to subdue it. Earlier in the film, Sifu's wife offers him a blue flower, and that flower ages and dies, as she does. As he's fighting this wind in the present, a hand emerges with a flower that is unperturbed by the wind, a blue flower. And as he allows himself to flow with the currents of air, he strikes and kills the one who offers this flower, who is Hua. He's essentially just killed Hua. Every one of his disciples is dead, and he really hasn't achieved his goal. As he's sitting there with Hua, and as the sun rises, he finds the flower in her palm. He realizes the similarities between Hua and his wife. This realization unfolds into a realization that nothing really dies, it simply transforms. This recognition of the tenuous yet almost eternal nature of things allows him to let go. And as he lets go, his body too dissolves, just as all of his disciples before him. And he re-enters into life with his disciples. A newfound harmony is discovered. So that's the story. I think now is the part where we have to make it. Thank you so much